Yeah, I think I need some more Halloween stuff to do. So let's see if this works. Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. It's showtime. Halloween Horror Nights 30. This was the event that was supposed to happen last year. We got two houses, and really a third one, I guess, happened on like the last weekend of October last year. Those three houses are back, along with a bunch of others, to make 10 total houses. I went this year on September the 15th, which was a Wednesday, and I did do the Fast Pass because I always do, because traveling about 3 hours down to Orlando, I'd rather have the Fast Pass and be able to do everything in one night than have to go back and do it all again. I had anticipated that going on a weekday night in mid-September with the Express Pass meant I would be able to get through a lot of stuff really quickly and get to do things over again if I wanted to. This was not the case. It was packed. I don't know if it's just people that were like itching for Halloween Horror Nights after missing out on it last year, or if I just had bad timing, because I did see other nights that looked like people were having a pretty easy time getting onto things. Granted, some of the other nights are open a little bit later, and I did get there slightly late, I guess I should also say. Technically, I think it does open at 6:30, but the doors, I guess, traditionally will open at 6, and I did not get there till like 6:30. So I walked basically right in. There was no line or wait like there normally is when I get there when the doors open, but it was already up and going by the time I got in. So here we go, the program for the year, which is also, the map and all that fun stuff. But in keeping with my normal tradition also, I went basically through the park counterclockwise. Just seems to be the best plan of action for me normally during these things. And started off with the house, Case Files Unearthed, Legendary Truth. And just to preface this a little more, I feel like there's like maybe 2 or 3 different types of Halloween Horror Nights fans. There's probably 3, if I really think about it. One would be the people that just go, they don't really give a crap, they just want to go to haunted houses, they don't care what the houses are necessarily, or what the properties are, or whatever. The second people, I think, are the people that go there because they're really excited about the intellectual properties that are being brought in. I consider myself one of those people for the most part. I've gotten more into the whole Halloween Horror Nights lore itself, like their original properties and everything, a little bit more over the years, but that's more of something that's come along with going to see movies brought to life, which, I mean, that's kind of what Universal's slogan used to be, so to me that makes the most sense, or being the big draw to go there. And the third people are the people that are more just like really into the Halloween Horror Nights lore, and they're, they just love seeing Jack the Clown and the Storyteller and all those people. Like, that's what they want out of a Halloween Horror Nights event. Being the 30th year, they went very heavy on those themes this year. And Case Files Unearthed is definitely one of the houses that seem to bank a lot on the lore of previous Halloween Horror Nights. This is a problem for me because not knowing that lore like some people seem to, I was a little confused what the hell was going on. So the basic premise of the house is like, I think it was 1991, you're going through these noir pulp novels about monsters, and I guess the idea is supposed to be that these were novels written about stuff, and then you're finding out they're real, and there's something about totems, but I have no fucking clue what the totems are about, because apparently that was like Halloween Horror Nights 18, and I missed that year probably. So yeah, I was confused what the story was, and this was the first of many houses I went through where I was just in the wrong spot in the line, and I missed a ton of scares, either happening in front of me, behind me. I just could either not see them or just barely see them if I like turned around and looked behind me at the right time when I heard a noise. So I think this house definitely had a lot of problems for me, both in the storytelling aspect and in the just seeing what was going on. Some things were cool. There's like a lot of like little like, the stereotypical like private eye doors, and you'd see like vignettes playing out behind them, like projections, and sometimes a monster would pop out of like broken glass. You went to like a nightclub and there was like some demonic lady, I guess, on stage. I watched somebody else's video, like press video, where they're able to film in the houses because you normally can't in Orlando, and it looked like there were supposed to be other demons in there that would lead to feeling like, oh, you're in a demonic like nightclub, and those weren't in there when I went, or they were hiding and I never saw them during my walk of that room. So once again, very confused what was going on. There's a lady on stage singing, ooh, scary. There were some cool effects. There was a cool thing of like somebody being possessed and they had like lights coming out of their eyes and stuff and a big vortex behind them. But overall, I just really didn't care for this house at all, and it left me very confused as to what was going on. The other thing I should mention is some of this like extra lore stuff I'm throwing in here I got from watching people who paid to do the like super expensive like RIP tours where they actually take you on a guided tour of the event and they tell you about the house before they drop you off in the house. And for a lot of these, I double checked. I don't think it's in the program. I don't think it's on their website, but there's information that would make these houses make a lot more sense that seems to only be given out if you go on this RIP tour. And when it comes to a year where a lot of the houses and a lot of the things are based off of them patting themselves on the back, something like that, on their previous houses and scare zones, I think providing a little more backstory for the people who haven't gone every fucking year would have really helped. After that house, the first scare zone on my path was Lights, Camera, Haction, Eddie's Revenge. Eddie is basically a really cheap Texas Chainsaw knockoff kind of character. Weird that they brought him back this year and did a Texas Chainsaw house. I think that's kind of strange. And the premise, I guess, was supposed to be that he's making a movie about Halloween Horror Nights and there's like dead bodies, or maybe they were making a movie about Halloween Horror Nights and he came and took over. I'm not really sure. But it's like a movie set and there's little like stages that they had actors on playing characters. I think they were all from scare zones from previous years. I don't think they were anything from houses. I think they were all scare zone based. Some that I'd seen in previous years and others that I definitely hadn't. And then there were some like set buildings, things in the middle of the street where it'd be like, oh, here's like the prop shop. And then, oh, look, this person got their head stuck on a drill press and got Lucio Fulci'd in the head. Somebody's corpse laying across a table saw, which is an actual real fear of mine, why I've never used a table saw in my life. They had like a catering truck full of like dead body parts and rotting meat and stuff, and I think they had like an electrical truck with some creepy stuff on it as well. It was a very packed scare zone. Honestly, I think more packed than it's been in previous years, because usually I think the stuff is more along the sides of the street than people walking in the road. This had just a lot of stuff in the middle of the road, and really I actually had to go and do a full loop around it to be able to see everything, just because of where everything was positioned, and you kind of had to see some stuff from one side and some stuff from another side. Next up on the path was the Gorewood Forest. This is the Terror Queen. I think I might have been to one of the years when she was at Halloween Horror Nights in like a scare zone. I don't remember. I want to say she was in part of the Islands of Adventure ones that I went to, like my first one. This was like a creepy looking forest. I think it was a Terror Queen up on the stage with like a body hanging. I think it might have been being drained of blood or its soul or something like that. And then when you went through this thing, there was like demented forest creatures, like these weird like chipmunk monsters and these like kind of bug-looking tree monsters and stuff in there. There's some cool designs. I thought it was pretty cool. I went through both these first ones. I went through once when it was daylight, and then I went through at nighttime. I think they both were better at night. It's cool going through them in the day because you get to see all that detail that went into everything, but they're meant to be seen at night in low lighting or like creepy lighting and fog and all that stuff. So they were, I think, better the second time around too, seeing them like that. Next up, out by the ET section, were the next two houses. So the first up, I went to Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice was the one that got a weekend last year. It's one of the ones that I watched a video walkthrough of last year because I didn't know it was coming back. I thought it was like, oh, we had this and we're just going to do it because it's Halloween kind of thing. But apparently that was all just a thing so they could bring Beetlejuice back. And I could tell just going through the park, people were hyped for Beetlejuice. I saw so many people dressed in vague Beetlejuice costumes or Lydia costumes or just merch from the movie and stuff. So I feel like that definitely was one of the big popular ones this year. It was fun. Like, that starts off with you like going through almost like an extended piece of the queue after you're already in the house, but like there's a Beetlejuice actor standing above you, like talking to people. It's actually, not a recorded audio. It's actually live, like him just giving people crap in the crowd as they come in. And it more or less walks you through the movie. You start kind of on the other side where they're having like their case manager review their stuff. So you see like the flat guy that's in the office. You go into the waiting room. I think there was supposed to be a scare with the receptionist, but I actually missed that one also. I don't know, it's one of those houses where they have scares, but they're not particularly scary because Beetlejuice isn't a particularly scary movie. But they give you, different things from the scenes and try to incorporate some jump scares into people popping up. I think it was really cool looking. It had that very Burton-y feel where everything was kind of, off kilter, almost like a German expressionistic kind of look, I think is really what he's probably referencing in some of that architecture. And then you end up going back through the door into the attic. You see they had the full model of the town out there, which is really cool to see brought to life. You see Beetlejuice on the TV, then you start seeing Beetlejuice in his different incarnations. You get shrunk down into the model and see him there, and then basically just plays through the entire movie. The scene with the dinner, they actually put it up on the ceiling, so you're basically walking underneath the entire dinner table. I saw somebody's video, it looked like the hands popped out. I don't remember them doing that when I saw it, so that was a little bit of a bummer. I didn't get that full effect. And in the very end, you walk into a room, and they did something very similar to what they did with Killer Clowns a few years ago, where they had like a giant, I assume, inflatable sandworm like coming down at you as the ending of the house. That was kind of a cool way to cap it off. Next up was the Hill of Haunting Hill house on Haunted Hill.
I'm mildly disappointed we don't have the satanic Barney statue anymore.
So, I gotta eat my words on this one. My last video, I was saying that I wasn't really sure the show was even a horror show. I wasn't really sure what they were going to do to make a haunted house out of this property. But you know what? It was really damn good. I feel like they covered like every scare from the show, because I don't feel like there were that many of them in the show, but they did a really good job. They had the tall guy, they had the bent neck lady. They did some cool effects with her. Like we'd see her in multiple scenes where like there's one part where she's like hovering above you like she does to the child early on. There's scenes where like there must have been like a scrim or something over a window, and like they project her onto the scrim, so it's like she would pop out of nowhere. I think they even had a mechanical one where they were dropping the corpse down on the noose. It was definitely interesting. The tall guy, I think you see him normal, like it's just a tall person in the costume at first, and granted I saw it, I'm like, ooh, bowler hat, scary. But later on, they actually have him on stilts, so it's a little more intimidating. They have like the room with the statues in it. The outside, when you first walk in, it's technically inside, but the outs, before you're really into the true house, they built the full facade of the front of Hill House, and that was really cool. That was impressive, if nothing else. I honestly wanted to go back through the house. I just did not have time at the end of the night. But yeah, the house was way better than the show was for me, so I gotta eat my words on that one just a bit. After that was the saddest walk of the whole night, because I went through Springfield and there were no chainsaws. Very disappointing. I feel like a lot of things were done with Horror Nights to try to provide a little extra social distance, or to have actors not quite as on top of each other. There were still a lot of places where it was packed full of people and pretty dense crowds, but it seemed like a lot of scare zones they were trying to put actors on stages and then maybe just have a few out in the mix. Even in the houses, a lot of actors were either way far away from you. A lot of them were wearing masks, either just normal like COVID masks or just full head like latex masks. And then some were even behind these like almost clear shower curtain or acrylic barriers, kind of like what they did last year. Not all of them were. Like last year, I think all of them were either distance or behind barriers. This year, that wasn't the case, but a good majority of them were. So I'm wondering if some of these extra social distancing things they did was why they made the decision not to have the roaming chainsaw clown gang, or it could be just as simple as maybe it was harder to get actors and they just needed everybody doing the houses in the real scare zones and not their little bonus scare zone. I'm not really sure, but it was disappointing to miss out on that piece. Next up was Puppet Theater, Captive Audience. This house is kind of one of my favorite sections of the houses usually every year. It's the upper corner kind of by Men in Black. And these are the ones, I think they're built on tents, and they always have a cool outdoor facade for these. So this one was like an old rundown theater. I think they were saying it was like early 1900s, I believe, was the area they were going for. And basically, from my understanding, there was an earthquake, and this demented puppet master and a ballet troupe or something were stuck in this theater. And he starts turning them into like possessed or dead marionettes, and he's trying to do the same to everybody walking through there. Really, it was just creepy puppet-looking characters. I don't really remember anything that super stood out about this house. It was fun. It definitely was cool. I think I saw a decent amount of the scares in this, but I'm really like, it didn't leave a big impression on me. The only thing I really did notice and took away was I'd been spending way too much time looking up Buckethead stuff online, because I did recognize that one of the actors had the distortions. I think it's the Fresh Death head, the like just the more human looking, less zombie looking version of the puppet they have, where it's like a decapitated head that Buckethead uses for Herbie. And I like saw that thing across the room. I'm like, oh, it's Herbie. So yeah, that was my big takeaway from that house. It was fine. It just wasn't like I said, super memorable to me. So a couple other bits for Puppet Theater. I think there were scenes where you're going through like the dressing room and they're like popping out of the mirrors. Basically different scenes of people like carving up bodies to turn them into puppets. Others of the actors rehearsing with like severed limbs and stuff. I think the one with the Herbie was actually doing like Shakespeare or something. One thing of this house that I think I saw repeated a lot of other places was they used a lot of mirrors in the houses this year. I don't know if that has a bigger meaning elsewhere, but I'm kind of thinking it might have been because of having the acrylic sheets in place. It was kind of to give you something else reflective to kind of fool your eye, whether you're looking at one of the places where the actors are going to pop up or whether it was a mirror or something like that. The other thing I guess that stood out is they had this weird like hallway you're walking down, and they had like marionettes hanging up, and I think it's supposed to like make you look at the marionettes and somebody would pop in from the other side. There's one thing, it was like a window. It was a guy with like freaking David the Gnome head going on, and then he had like the beard came down into a little like body. So it was this teeny tiny little body he was puppeteering with like a normal human sized head on top of it. It was weird. I liked it because it wasn't like boo. It was like, okay, it's just kind of disturbing. It's just weird. And I don't know. Sometimes I think Halloween Horror Nights could do with a little more weird, creepy, and less overt jump scares at times. I thought it was cool to set the mood. Next up is Wicked Growth, The Realm of the Pumpkin. This, I'm just going to say it here, my favorite house of the night. The only one I did twice. Granted, I didn't have time to do any other ones again, but this is the one I prioritized to see a second time. This thing, you walk in and there's two big spires going up covered in jack-o'-lanterns, and then there's like almost like a cornucopia, like funnel-shaped thing, also full of jack-o'-lanterns, like on the outside, but they continue as you walk in. And technically, it's not even the beginning of the house until you're a decent way through there, I realized. It was just a cool front facade. And they didn't like go too crazy. Like some of the jack-o'-lanterns were creepy looking, and other ones were just incredibly silly and goofy looking. And I really appreciated that they had some variety in the jack-o'-lanterns. Also, the size, shape, all that was all over the place. So it definitely wasn't cookie cutter. It really did have that realistic feel that you got a bunch of real pumpkins and had a bunch of random people carve them, and it was all different and crazy. So as you go into Wicked Growth, after you get through the tunnel going in, there's actually a bit like outside of a farmhouse, and one of two places they use this trick in the house where there's like a fence or a lattice work that looks like it's solid, but it's actually like a bungee material, and there's a creature like reaching out of it for you and just like bends the wood around its hand because it's not really wood. The house itself is like decrepit. There's kind of these demon looking things. I think they're supposed to be pumpkin monsters. Their heads are kind of skull looking and they're more or less white. But I think the idea was that as you go through, maybe the pumpkins are ripening or something, and they get more orange as you go on. So you kind of go through this house. There's a bunch of like creepy things. There's stuff coming out from the ceiling. There's stuff coming out up high and low in all different directions, which is really cool. I believe there was a part where they were like looking in windows. So once again, feeding into that acrylic sheet being there and having it feel a bit more natural within the house itself. There was a part, and I noticed this in a couple houses actually. I think Legendary Truth did it, and I think Beetlejuice also did it, where they had a giant head of some kind that kind of like came out of a wall at you. This time it was a giant jack-o'-lantern, of course. Then you kind of leave the farmhouse, you go through like a cemetery, there's like a Grim Reaper amongst all these like pumpkins and tombstones and stuff. There's a piece where you actually, looks like you cross an old like wooden covered bridge, which was so cool. Like they had things you could see out the sides, and it looked like you were looking out into like misty beyonds of just like the plains of the farm area. There's actually holes in the bottom. They weren't real holes, but there's like clear parts of the floor where it looks like you were looking down into the river below. Such a cool effect. So many things in this house just had me smiling like an idiot. There's a scene with like a witch like summoning the pumpkin lord, and she has like a cauldron and a spell book that's like changing colors, and at one point like the body that's in the cauldron tries to get up and she just like smack it back down in there. And then you're in this like, it looks like you're inside of a pumpkin. There's like strands hanging down from the ceiling, like latex strands with pumpkin seeds, like it's the pumpkin guts. And you're on there, there's more monsters, and eventually you find like a big jack-o'-lantern with a pumpkin lord above it yelling down at everybody. And they gave it this nasty ass burp effect. I don't know if it's supposed to be a burp or it's supposed to be roaring, but it sounded like it was burping to me. And they actually like spray water on you when you went past it. It was really nasty, but it was so cool. It was definitely my favorite of the night. The next house up is Welcome to Scary, Horror in the Heartland. This is based off of Cary, Ohio, sorry. This is a town that I think it's a real town, but it was a hometown of somebody who works at Halloween Horror Nights, and they incorporated it into their lore as this place where all these bad things come from. And if I'm correct, I don't think they've ever gone to Cary in one of their houses. They just had things from Cary showing up at Universal, and this might have been the first time they went there. I'm not really sure about that. This is another one of those houses, unfortunately, that I think was just them jerking themselves off with their own lore. So I don't really understand a lot of what I saw. From my understanding, watching other people's videos, I think it was like almost like a greatest hits of things that have incorporated Cary in the past. But you walk in, it looks like you're going into like a well house or a pump house. So I thought maybe it was trying to explain like, oh, well, all these things came from underground and that's what permeated the town, and then the town permeates it outward. That may have been the case, but I don't really know because I got confused as we went on. You're really just kind of walking through the town. You're in this like sewery section with like spider eggs and grotesque monsters in there. Then you're kind of going through like creepy old houses with like ghosts rats and zombie-looking monsters going through it. And I think there was a part where I couldn't tell if it was a farm or a schoolhouse or something. I think it was more likely a schoolhouse. I believe they had one of the characters in there who was supposed to be an icon years ago, and she never got a chance to be because it was a little kid. And I think they had, like, Orlando had a bunch, or maybe it wasn't Orlando, but like somewhere had a bunch of child abductions around the same time as Halloween Horror Nights, so they decided having a creepy child probably wasn't a good idea. But they incorporated her into the house. There's a television studio, and I think it was in Wicked Growth as well. Both houses, I think, had references to that. I think it was called Slaughter Cinema, which was a house a few years ago that I really enjoyed. That was basically just like little B-movie sections, like you're going through a drive-through and seeing a bunch of different like grindhouse movies. And they had like posters and stuff for it. Like I said, I think both houses had little bits of it, but this one had like a TV studio that kind of incorporated that in. I believe the horror host guy that you see in the TV studio was from previous years as well. There's also bits where it looks like you're kind of going in, there's like cracked flaming stuff around. And all I could think about was a few years ago where it felt like every house ended in some weird vision of hell because there's always like fire at the end of every house or a lot of the houses. So I was kind of throwback to that, but I know that's not what they're referencing. It probably meant that it was actually hell or something. I don't know. Then you go into like a butcher shop and there's like that was the thing, Big Boy or whatever from California, that fast food giant guy. Kind of looks like Lard Lad from The Simpsons. I don't think it's actually that guy, but I think it's their own version of that, like pops out and scares you in this creepy butcher shop. And I think it kind of ended with like either a police station or security station, maybe implying that this was everything getting out of the town and spreading outwards. Once again, not super sure. And after a long stretch of houses, we finally get back to a scare zone, and up at the top we have Crypt TV. I mentioned this in my previous video as well, that I was catching up on all different properties. I did watch every episode they had, at least I'm pretty sure I did, that had something related to a character in the scare zone. So the Sunny Family Cults, they had Miss Anity, I think was her name. It was the Spider Woman kind of thing. They had Looksee. They had, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the girl's name. It was the field hockey girl. They had her. They had a couple things in this forest section. I thought they were supposed to have the birch. I didn't see the birch. They had the girl from like the door in the woods. They had the actual door there. They had the cannibal monster, like when people eat flesh in the woods, kind of like a Wendigo kind of creature, but I don't remember what the thing's name is. It started with an M, I think. And then they had the Harclaw or something like that. It was like a bird woman creature. And then they had, I think it's Harold. They're kind of like demon Santa creature. Overall, I think it was decent. They had screens at places playing clips from the episodes. They had stuff projecting out on the buildings, like the facade of like San Francisco behind this section of the park. They're projecting out Crypt TV stuff all over that. My big problem with this, and it had some implications in other scare zones, but it was worse in this one, I think, because this area is kind of a bottleneck also. I know this is one of those scare zones I usually, unless it's something I really want to see, and it rarely is, I try to kind of get in and out of because it's just a bit more cramped. But people were gathering around these stages to watch what was going on, which is fine. I think that's kind of the point. But the crowds are getting pretty deep at points. It was kind of hard to maneuver around them. And then it was a lot of people wanting to take selfies with the actors. And I remember years ago, they used to refuse. Like, they would not take selfies with you. If you tried to, like, you know, get into, like, selfie mode, they'd walk away. And I think some actors still do it. I remember at the Trick or Treat house one year, I don't think he was trying to take a selfie. I think I was just trying to get a good picture of Sam, and he kept walking away every time I tried. You know, when you actually go to take not just a photo as you're going through, but just actually take a selfie and pose and whatever, you know, like, it takes time. And then it's just, I feel like other people aren't getting to enjoy what's going on in the scare zone if all of the scare actors are preoccupied with taking photos with people. It just makes it a photo op, not a scare zone. And that's kind of annoying. So I really kind of hope Universal brings back the policy of no selfies, or not to participate in selfies from the actor's side. Next up, as we moved into the New York section of the park, we were scanning the scene in the city that night. We were looking for some, I think, aliens, vampires to put up a fight. Scare zone's called Seek and Destroy, why I'm quoting Metallica here. And it was kind of interesting. It was guys in like white coveralls with these like masks that covered their whole head. It was like a chrome reflective visor on this white helmet. I feel like maybe they're like, oh, we'll make our own Among Us scare zone or something. I don't know. Some of them had like weapons. Some of them had like batons or like scanner things. There were some big towers they've used in the past for like the Purge and stuff that had actors on top. There were some smaller stages in like the middle of the thing that had actors. There were some actors on stilts. So everybody was kind of in a uniform, if that makes any sense. Everybody was wearing the same thing, but they were in different heights and locations and stuff. Then at the end, by the tribute store, there was a stage where it looked like they had like a digital like wireframe head on a screen at the top. I didn't realize it wasn't just a show. I think it was actually an interactive thing where somebody was talking through that head and communicating with people down below. And it's supposed to be like grabbing people and like, I guess, threatening them or having them plead their case before these creatures or whatever. And then like, yeah, they'd actually get to interact with this thing. And then throughout the thing, I guess they were draining people for their blood. So you'd see these stations set up where there were like cubes where they were like draining bodies. You see bodies hanging with hoses coming out of them and like these cubes filling up with blood. I don't know why, but I saw the cubes with red fluid in them. All I could think of was like Energon in Transformers. I don't know why that's where my brain went, but yeah, that's why I was like, I think it's vampires, but it's kind of alien, kind of sci-fi. It was interesting, if nothing else. This is also where the tribute store is. The tribute store is, you can buy Halloween Horror Nights merch throughout the park, but this is where they have like all of it, and then it's in a themed store. So this was all based on the icons this year. You go into the front facade, looks like an old creepy house. You're walking through like the rooms of the house and stuff, and there's various random stuff on the wall. It looks like an old mansion with just a bunch of crap. I mean, I shouldn't talk. A bunch of crap all over the walls. Once again, a lot of mirrors in here. They had display cases that had like various bits of Halloween Horror Night history pieces, I guess. Like old programs, some like maquettes they did for various things, some masks they used in previous years. Just different random bits and pieces they've used over the years and stuff associated with the event for the last 30 years. So that was kind of cool. Another one of those things, and I don't mean to keep harping on this, but I've watched videos of people that are much more into the whole Halloween Horror Nights lore than I am, and I can tell they're very excited to see these things. I can't identify a lot of the items myself because I'm just not so up on that stuff, but I can tell the people that knew what it was were very excited to see it. The next room's kind of more of like a portrait gallery. They actually had like a balcony around the top, so it looked like it was even a 2-story room kind of thing. And there were various portraits of the various icons around the room. The portraits all had kind of a changing feature to them to some degree. It was very subtle, but they were basically projections instead of being a flat portrait. And they had like busts of the characters as well. Excuse me, sorry. And then you kind of go out through this like tunnel that they always have where they have pictures on the wall that look like old-timey creepy pictures. This was a thing I guess you could do. You could pay to have your picture, like send in a picture of yourself. They would modify it to look like old-timey and creepy. They put it on the wall for the entirety of Halloween Horror Nights. And I guess at the end of Halloween Horror Nights, they send it back to the people who submitted their picture. So you could have something of yourself that lived all season in the tribute store, and then you could have that as like a souvenir for yourself, which I think that's kind of cool. Like if I'd known about it in time, I kind of would have considered doing it, to be quite honest. Then you're out into this kind of like garden-y area or just the woods. I couldn't really tell what it was supposed to be. I think it was maybe you're moving away from the house, so it's like the garden and then the woods. And you see like a old-timey carriage. It's supposed to be like for an insane asylum, which I think is where all these icons were held, or at least some of the icons were held. I know Jack, I think, specifically has ties to that lunatic asylum. And then, yeah, it kind of continues that outdoors feel. And that's where they sell like food and candy and stuff. And I think it's supposed to be like a stable, I think, actually, now that I think about it. I think it had like a bunch of horse stuff all over the place. And as you're leaving, you see that carriage again, and it's been torn open, and it looks like whatever was being carried in it escaped. I believe there's also journal entries throughout the place if you looked hard enough, and you could like get more story from reading these journal entries. The other thing they had that they did last year as well were these moldoramas. Sadly enough, they did the same characters, I guess you could say, as they did last year. Last year they had a different jack-o'-lantern, but a jack-o'-lantern nonetheless. Last year was orange. It was a creepier face. I think it was from their original Halloween Horror Nights logo. This one's happier. does have Universal on the back. I did notice, I got 2 of them. I got one for a friend. There is a slot there on the top. I wonder if this was maybe molded off of a bank or something. And then they have a Frankenstein's monster head. Last year they had the entire full body Frankenstein monster. This time they just did the head. Last year it was green. This year it's purpley, I guess. Oh, you know what? I think this actually proves it is a bank, because this one, they have, I don't know if that's legible on screen, but there's a slot in the back here too, and it says cutout on it. Maybe they're intended to be turned into banks. Maybe it's not that they were banks. Maybe I'm supposed to make it a bank. I don't know. But how would you get the coins out? You have to cut it open. I don't know. My guess is they came off of banks, but it also says Universal Studios there on the bottom too. These are cool. I like that they're doing these. Apparently, I think they have a Bruce the Shark in one of their stores in City Walk that I didn't get a chance to go to. I kind of hope they keep doing the Moldoramas at Halloween Horror Nights, but I want to see them do some other characters. Even if they just hit other Universal monsters or other things. Like, I don't think I want like a Leatherface one. I guess that'd be kind of cool, but like, you know, I don't want like a licensed IP. If they kept it stuff that was internal to them, but just did different things instead of just doing Frankenstein monsters and pumpkins, that'd be really cool. But yeah, I got these. They're cool. Next house up was Hhn Icons Captured. This was the big one of all the ones of them going over their history and celebrating what 30 years of this has been. I think this was the big one for them. Had all their different icons in it. You walk in this big crazy facade where there's like vines and flames and stuff, and it like has like these knife looking things that are like representing each of the icons. You go in, you see them all imprisoned in this thing. I believe there's some big story where they're imprisoned in this thing that another icon controlled, and that's where they're all living, and you're going into that realm. I don't really know. But yeah, you kind of go through, you see a bunch of them captured, but then you see like some of them breaking out. You see Jack, and I forget if it was Fear or the Bone Daddy thing or whatever they call that. Chance, I think they were all like locked up when you first go in. Or I could be misinterpreting this because they were behind plexiglass and maybe they weren't supposed to be locked up, but my brain interpreted that as locked up because they're behind glass. And then you get into a part where you're seeing, I think you saw like the caretaker in like a creepy old house. The caretaker's in, like torturing some people, cutting out their heart or something. You see the director like directing a film and have a film set thing. You go into a movie theater and there's the usher like beating somebody in the face. It's kind of funny. I wish that was at some movie theaters I go to. Yeah, you just kind of go through these different scenes of the various icons. And at the end, you have like this hallway where I think it was modular. I think it could be different every time. There were different icons as you were walking up, and then you were approaching this throne in front of you. And I guess the big deal was that a different icon could be on the throne at any time. So I know opening night, it sounded like a lot of people were saying that Jack was on the throne, which made sense. I could kind of see opening night, they want Jack to be on there as much as possible because that's their first and biggest icon. But it was Chance when I went through, which is appropriate because that was really the first time I really paid attention to their icons is when they had Chance in there. So I felt like the appropriate one for me to see at the end of that. After that was Revenge of the Tooth Fairy. There's a house that was there last year. Felt like the almost exact same house. I think they might have had a couple extra scares thrown in. I almost feel like they made the masks look a little better than they did last year. But you basically go in through like a storybook. There's like scenes above you, and you go into this like pop-up book looking room. And it's a story about a kid who doesn't want to give up his tooth to the tooth fairies after he loses it. And then you go through this mansion that he lives in and see everybody's being killed and having their like teeth and jaws ripped out by the tooth fairy creatures. And at the end, the kid's like turned into a tooth fairy monster. It's fun. Like I said, it didn't change enough from last year for me to really have any strong feelings either way about it. I've now done that house 4 times, so I wasn't like, I don't know. It's fine. It's cool. It was good. It just wasn't new. So, I mean, I can't complain too much, but it's going to make it hard to rank these houses at the end because just because I'd seen it before, I got to still try to rank them in a fair way, I think, and I'm not sure how to do that. After that was Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I thought, as they'd done in previous years, this was going to be going straight through the plot of the movie. That's what they did. Last time they had Texas Chainsaw, like they literally just went through the movie, you saw various scenes from it, and there was nothing indicating that that wasn't going to be the case this time. And you go through, like, you start off at the gas station. I think they pumped in a lot of, like, barbecue set into various places. You go through all that. You go through areas where there's, like, pigs jumping out and spitting on you. Once again, spitting on you. Kind of gross, but kind of funny. Leatherface is all over the house, like, right from the very beginning. He's popping up, attacking you with a chainsaw. You go through, like, the kitchen. Like, Very early on, you see Drayton Sawyer with his broom, which just had me laughing my ass off. And I wonder how many people were confused about the old man with the broom if they didn't know the movie well. Go through the house, you see like grandpa and grandma and just various scenes of carnage as you go. And at one point, like, I know Universal has been using Trick or Treat Studios masks, at least, if not masks and props, a fair bit in recent years. I know when they did like some of the Halloween houses, I'm 99% sure that's the mask that they've been using for Michael Myers, the Tots one. I'm trying to remember. I think there's other ones that I remember seeing where it was just Trick or Treat Studio stuff. And I mentioned before, there was a distortions piece in a house. I'm sure it wasn't the only distortions piece they used. So I saw the Nubbins prop, the Nubbins from Texas Chainsaw 2, the flattened hitchhiker. And I got kind of confused. I'm like, well, maybe, I don't know, maybe it was supposed to be from the end of the film and it was a pre-made thing and they threw it in there. And then later on, you come across Leatherface doing the scene from the beginning of Texas Chainsaw 2 where he has the Nubbins prop like attached to the front of him with the saw. And I was just like, what the fuck is going on here? It was cool. It was really neat, but I was so confused why this stuff was in there. And you go through other parts too, where like out in a field, there's like a tractor that honks at you and Leatherface comes out from behind like clotheslines or whatever. It was a lot of fun. I don't remember a ton of the specifics of it, but I remember just overall enjoying the house. But when I got home, I watched, like I mentioned before, that RIP tour that somebody else went on, and they said that this takes place 4 years after the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. If they had put that in there, it would have made so much more sense to me. I think there is a clip in the beginning when you're in the gas station, like playing bits of the end of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre original. But sometimes they'll do that in houses anyway, so it didn't signal to me immediately that we are going and talking about the movie's ending where we're starting kind of thing. So that would have made everything make a lot more sense. It would have explained why Nubbins is there and not the hitchhiker, all that stuff. Also, the California one does seem to follow the movie more accurately, and the hitchhiker is alive in that one. So just overall, like, that added to my confusion too, is having watched clips of the Hollywood version. The other thing I'm going to say is that I feel like every time they do Texas Chainsaw at Universal, they have to modern it up a little bit, because, you know, Texas Chainsaw is a movie more, to me, about atmosphere than anything else. There's not really a lot of blood and gore in the movie, despite what the movie's content is. So I feel like when they do it for Halloween Horror Nights, they have to up that stuff and make it almost more like a little bit 2003, a little bit 1974. The last house I had was another one from last year, Bride of Frankenstein Lives. Once again, very similar to how it was last year. Basically, you walk in, you see the end scene of Bride of Frankenstein. This actually clicked with me that it was the end of Bride of Frankenstein. You see the crumbling castle of the We Belong Dead scene. And then you're transported into a world where people who made this forget that the Bride of Frankenstein did not like Frankenstein's monster at all in that fucking movie. So we see her trying to save him and then resurrect him using the blood of the brides of Dracula, so these vampire chicks, to try and extract the blood out and reanimate him. You go through different scenes where she's doing different medical experiments and torturing the vampires. Eventually, there's this cool hallway where there's like different canisters where she's like draining villagers, I guess, of their essence. And the Gillman's there in one of them. Was there last year too. Gone on record here before about loving Creature from the Black Lagoon. I mean, he's on my arm forever. But eventually at the end, she resurrects the monster and then both of them are attacking you. Very similar to last year, but I still enjoyed it. At this point, I went and grabbed food from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre themed food booth. They always have food booths. I believe this is the first time they've themed different ones to different houses. So this one looked like the gas station from Texas Chainsaw. It was just a kind of a loose facade, but it had that feel to it. It had like little gas pumps out front. I got like the barbecue lamb, and it was kind of funny because it's like a nice little portion of barbecue, but it came with like a slice of white bread and some like random dill pickle chips on the thing. Like I was gonna be like dill pickle potato chips when I read the thing, but it was literally just like slices of dill pickle. It was still really good. I took that over to the Lagoon where they were doing the Lagoon show again that they did a couple years ago. This one's called Marathon of Mayhem Carnage Factory. And it's basically what they do is they have water shooting up out of the saloon. I think they have fog effects as well. And they have projections both on the sprayed up water and then onto the buildings behind it and like from where you're sitting. Did it 2 years ago, and I think I like that one more just because they had like, I think it was Ghostbusters, Stranger Things, Killer Clowns from Outer Space. It had this really cool like 80s theme going on with it. This one was more focusing again on the icons, and they threw in a lot of Universal Monster stuff. They did also include some stuff from the IPs. They had House on Haunted Hill was in there, and I think Texas Chainsaw was in there. I guess technically the Universal Monsters are an IP, but I don't know. To me, it's like Universal was built off the backs of those movies. I feel like if they didn't have those movies, Universal Studios wouldn't have a theme park. Just the butterfly effect of that. So I don't really consider those outside IPs for the most part. But it was still fun. It was cool to see. It was a really impressive show. It was a good way to just chill for a little bit, eat some dinner, and enjoy something while I was doing it.
Just what a monster of a prize!
After that, I kind of crossed back over to the top of the park again, where there was a photo op for the Chucky TV show that's coming out. They basically had like various Good Guy doll boxes stacked up, and they would take your picture, and you would be like in the frame of one of the Good Guy doll boxes. It looked like the packaging was shattered out, and the photo would be random and have like strobe lights and a burst of air, so it's supposed to make you not be posed and be like more like freaked out or whatever. From what I've heard, it made most people just close their eyes, so it's just a bunch of really bad pictures. And there was another thing next to it. It looks like it was like a scrim with like an outline of Chucky, so I guess you're supposed to see like Chucky's silhouette on there. So they told me to go in there and do it, and then when I was done, to like scan this QR code. And I think they didn't tell me something right, because the QR code took me to a website that never loaded a photo. So either there's something else I was supposed to do that they didn't tell me, or it just didn't work. And the guy working there honestly just seemed like he couldn't be fucking bothered. So yeah, I don't know. So I didn't get that picture. I took the picture, I never got to see it, so that really sucks. At this point, I kind of went back through and went to the first two scare zones. That's when I went through them at night to see them in the dark. Then went to the last scare zone, which was 30 Years, 30 Fears. They had some kind of like murals up with different icons on them. They had some stages with a few different various characters, not icons. I thought it was going to be the icons in this. Like the one year they had like the Chance thing when she was the icon. They had a little stage with different versions of Chance and her minions. That's what I kind of thought this was going to be. It was really just various like characters, like sexy demon girls dancing and pumpkin monsters and stuff like that. There was like a clown chick walking through the crowd with a knife and a rubber chicken. I think she was the only person I saw walking through the crowd when I was there. Super short scare zone. Like you could walk through that thing in less than a minute easy. But they did also have these cool towers like shooting flames out of the top. Like I get it. I think I went the way that you're not really supposed to go. I think if you were coming into the park and just went straight, it was really impressive just to see that as like the first big thing in front of you, and the big flaming things, 30 Years, 30 Fears. Like it makes sense, even though it was kind of a letdown actually walking through it. It was cool looking as you came into the park.
Go.
that was my experience. As I mentioned, I did the Fast Pass, and I used my Fast Pass on everything, except for, you can only use it, I think, once per house, so the second time I went through Wicked Growth, I had to wait the full line, but it was actually kind of short by that point because it was later in the night. But I didn't have a lot of time to do other stuff. Like, usually I go to the Five and Dime and look at the, like, giant Universal monster statues in there. Usually I go on Men in Black. Usually I spend more time in the Tribute store. Usually I go in the Universal Studios store, which I kind of peeked in and saw they had a Beetlejuice display in there, and I kind of wanted to go see it, but I really just was running out of time and trying to do other things. So yeah, I was surprised by how little I was able to do. I think there's more houses this year than normal, so maybe that really accounts for a chunk of it. But just in general, I was surprised how much of a time crunch I was in to get everything done. However, I think I was kind of harsh on some of the stuff this year because I didn't know as much about what was going on. I like to know what's going on and what I'm watching, what I'm doing. But overall, it was very fun. The houses were cool. It was just great to be back after a year of not really having Halloween Horror Nights, just having this little abbreviated version of it. It's weird because, like, for years, I had only gone to Universal for Halloween Horror Nights. And then since the last real Halloween Horror Nights, I went there 3 times and like a normal daytime park going thing. That's weird for me. So it was good to be back in the way that I normally experience Universal as a big haunted house. So if I'm gonna rank the houses, you know what? Let me cheat and get the list out in front of me again. So bottom, in 10th place, very bottom, definitely gonna say Case Files Unearthed. That one just didn't do it for me in the least. After that, probably gonna go with Welcome to Scary. I will say there's a big gap between these two. I think Welcome to Scary was fine. I had fun with it, but I think I just was not the target audience for that house in terms of seeing the things that were gonna make me super happy about it. After that, number 8, I would say Puppet Theater, Captive Audience. Fun, but nothing super special. Honestly, had to watch a video of it to remember a lot of what was going on in there. Number 7, I kind of hate to do it, but I'm gonna say Beetlejuice. It was fun, but it wasn't particularly scary, and I don't know, it just getting to this point, a lot of the ones above it I like more, so yeah. Number 6, I'll go with Revenge of the Tooth Fairy. Decent, as it was last year, but nothing to write home about, really. For 5 and 4, it's honestly a toss-up between Bride of Frankenstein Lives and Icons Captured. Part of me wants to say Frankenstein lower than Icons, just because I saw Frankenstein last year, and at least it was more exciting to see Icons this year because it was new for me, but that's not really fair. I'm going to give them a tie for 5 and 4. And you know what? 3 and 2, I could probably tie Texas Chainsaw and Haunting of Hill House. I think that one's hard to judge as well because it's a property I really love versus a property I don't really care for. I bet, honestly, if you're looking at it in terms of house, Haunting of Hill House is probably slightly better in terms of being a haunted house, but I had more fun in Texas Chainsaw just because I enjoy being in that universe for a little while. So yeah, I'll give Texas Chainsaw 3, Haunting a Hill House 2, and then number 1, Wicked Growth, without a question. Incredibly fun. Really like that one. So that felt like a lot. It was overall a very fun event. Glad I went. Kind of want to go back just because I didn't get to do as much as I wanted to the first time through. But I got plenty of other stuff coming up that I'm going to. So I think that haunt itch will get scratched one way or another. But thank you for joining me on this video, and I will be back in the next one at yet another haunt. So I will see you then.